All right, let's get to our discussion now. Nigeria's debt stock has been on the rise since the country obtained a debt pardon from her foreign creditors in 2006. And the country's debt profile now stands at 21.7 trillion naira.
Well, that's where we are now. Even more worrisome is the disclosure by the Debt Management Office that the federal government borrowed 4.4 trillion naira in 2017 alone and now spends 34% of its revenue on debt servicing.
Of the total debt stock, domestic debt stands at 15 trillion naira, while external debt is 5.8 trillion naira. Now, between 2016 and 2017, Nigeria's debt stock took a leap from 17 trillion naira to 21 trillion naira, indicating a 4 trillion naira increase.
A further breakdown indicates that the domestic debt for the federal government is 12.6 trillion naira, while that of states and the federal capital territory is 3.4 trillion naira.
Now, in 2017 alone, Nigeria spent 1.6 trillion naira on debt servicing, 1.5 trillion for domestic debt, and 142 billion naira for external debt. Debt.
Indeed, everywhere. Joining us in the studio is an economist and public affairs analyst, Kunle Olomofe. Good morning to you and thank you for joining us.
Definitely, it's my pleasure.
Yeah. Are you worried? Because we've heard many times that international agencies like the IMF will tell us that we should watch the way our country is borrowing, you know, and then later on the same organization could come out to say that Nigeria is doing pretty well. Is Nigeria being deceived that, and therefore, of course, the government, the finance minister will say that, no, our debt to revenue ratio is too good, we're pretty much safe, nothing is amiss. But are you worried, really, as an economist, that if they do not slow down, something could give way?
Certainly. I'm very worried. I mean, TVC does a really good service to the country by keeping an eye on this. If I recall, you followed this about 3 months ago, yes. At least twice 3 months ago. And then it was also said on one of your shows that economics is, you know, basically pick what you want to talk about. If I want to make it look good to you, I pick a certain statistic. If I want to make it look bad to you, I pick a certain statistic. I just basically work it the way that I want to. And another thing is, you know, because many people are not financially intelligent, it's easy to use the numbers to deceive. So, and then when you call a lot of different numbers, I mean, look at all the numbers you called. How many of them is the average Nigerian going to even understand, talk less of remember? You know, so what we should be doing is, you know, informing the public on the level of the public. And when the public is better informed, when the public understands these concepts better, they can better voice their displeasure and voice their ideas for change. For example, I mean, you look at, you know, countries outside, within Africa. I mean, we're not the only country, you know, doing badly, right? But we're also not the only country that has leaders that claim they are fighting corruption and all of these other things. You look at Tanzania, for example, John Magufuli, I think his name is. Yes. He's been dubbed, you know, the war against waste president. And he's actually taking the steps to do it. The reason is he talks and acts on the level of the people. If we continue to speak over the heads of people, the people are not empowered enough to fight for the right that they should fight for. Here's the funny thing about all the debt. You know, you mentioned when you, at the end of that, you were like debt. At the end of the day, somebody has to pay that debt. It's not going to be the guys in government now. That's the way it always works.
That's what we've discovered, and that's what they service debt.
And that's why they continue to do the same thing, because they look at it and say, I'm going to take this amount of loans. Yes, I will do whatever I need to do. I will leave a good legacy, but I'm also going to leave the debt for somebody else to worry about.
All right, but how in this case do we reconcile the issue of the reports? Every month we get to see, in fact, about 2 months ago, within a short period of time, the Nigerian Foreign Reserve shot very high, about $46 billion. And Nigerians were happy, okay, our foreign reserve is increasing. But how do we reconcile foreign reserve increasing and then foreign debt also increasing? How do we?
I think the problem really is, and it might be with the policies of this government. I mean, you have a situation where I'm sure it's news everywhere now that one of the richest men in the world has decided to weigh in, you know, to the issues of the way Nigeria's economic policies are working. Clearly, there's a problem because if one of the richest people in the world sees a problem with what you're doing, He knows money management and wealth development, right? He knows these kinds of things, wealth growth. So, the concept that you raised just now is the fact that the policies are not answering the issues on ground. You know, the president and his advisors and the economic advisors that he has are not trying to solve the problem using conventional methods. And I have to say, you know, to be fair, I like to be fair and balanced in my analysis. You know, that is to their credit, right? But the challenge they have is this: when you try something that is out of the box and it appears not to be working, even to you, you need to redress your steps and take a new approach. I like to use the example of, you know, when the Naira was really going crazy and it was going 400, 500, the president didn't want to do anything about it initially. And then somebody on his team may have advised them better, and they started to pump money into the economy in terms of dollars. And then, you know, the so-called crash sort of, you know, subsidized and slowed down because they saw the problem. So when you raise this problem about, you know, we have such fantastic foreign, you know, reserve and yet we have this issue, it's because the government isn't connecting the dots.
And when you talk about, you know, getting loans, and more loans, many would tell you that it's not about, you know, getting new loans or servicing debt, but about for what purpose really? Because if you for capital projects, these loans you'll be able to get the money back and then you'll be able to repay the loans. But if you tell Nigerians one thing and then you collect loans and you expend the loans on something else which is not going to generate money for you, there is a problem. And many economists have told us many times that that is the situation with Nigeria. It's
exactly right. Actually, you mentioned capital projects. It depends on what kind of capital projects you're talking about. You know, because it's not everything that you invest money in that is going to yield money, one, and it's not everything you invest money in that's going to yield money immediately, two. So you have a situation where this government is more concerned about long-term results than short-term results. That is, again, to their credit. However, and I have advised them many times on this, the finance minister may not be listening to the advice of many economists around the country and around the world. At the same time as you're trying to do the long-term solutions, you should also have short-term solutions in place. Because, you know, I mean, it's obvious to everybody in Nigeria, well, the people who choose to look at it very critically is what I would like to say, is that you're talking about 46 billion foreign reserves, you're talking about, you know, the stock exchange is doing well, you're talking about manufacturing is going up, and the people are not feeling it. There's a disconnect. Now, when you know that there's a disconnect, a good government should try to find a way to bridge the gap. Not say, look, because we're focusing on long term, we're not going to listen to the cries, and we're not going to listen to the complaints. And look at what is happening to the debt profile. It's going to continue. It's increased at a far higher rate than it has ever done. You know, and we don't see what well, look, again, I like to be fair. Paying, you know, a debt servicing at 2 trillion is actually not a bad idea. It's good to service your debt, obviously.
But when your national budget is pegged at about how much? 8.61 trillion naira, and then you're about 25% or so.
Yes, I actually agree with that. I actually agree with what the finance minister has done with that aspect of it. Because if you're not servicing the debt, then you are indeed irresponsible. So it's a good idea to say, yes, our income is 8 trillion, and then we're servicing with about 25%. That shows that you're thinking about the future. The challenge they have is they think too far into the future and not enough in the short term. That's the challenge we have right now in Nigeria.
But going forward, when it comes to finding solution to this, we know that many countries, in fact, the United States is one of the countries with high debts when it comes
the worst is that $20 trillion.
Exactly, when it comes to the amount of money. But you said earlier that there seems to be a disconnect between, certainly the government is doing some things, but the people are not feeling it. But if you go to the United States, put the amount, the amount is so huge, but the people are feeling the impact. Now, if you come back to Nigeria, lots of Nigerians, Okonjo Iweala, Obi Ezekwesili and the others, they are consultants too. You know, all
we have them to the high heavens.
To the high heavens. What is really that missing link where we cannot galvanize?
They perform out there, but once you bring them in...
No. I actually disagree with that. I think what it is...
What's the missing link, really?
The missing link is this. We have the brains, but the people in power part-time play politics. This is the problem. So, for example, look, when this government came in, I mean, I was very pro this government. In fact, I am still pro this government, but I will chastise them when I have to, if you get what I mean. So when they were coming in, they promised Nigerians certain things. They said they were going to bring the best brains from everywhere in the world. And they specifically talked about Nigerians from the diaspora. My brother is a financial expert as well. I mean, he's far better than I am. He basically sleeps and dreams numbers all day long. And I said to him, I said, did you hear what the president said? He said, people like you, they're going to need you here. It's been 3 years. It's been 3 years. We've not heard anything about the president talking about going into the diaspora and saying, all you guys out there giving your brains to other countries, come over here. We've got work for you to do. And that's where they have the disconnect.
That was why I said what I said earlier, that these people would perform out there. But once they come in, somehow, something happens and then they don't get to perform.
Yes.
So
they don't allow them.
So it's just politics.
Exactly. It's a political will.
Yes. It's a political will. You see, apart from political will, I think it's a political direction. Because the president of Nigeria directs, right? He doesn't do every single thing himself. So if he directs, if he says, look, this is what I want. I talked about the president of Tanzania. When he got in, I think it was within a short period of time when he got in, there was an Independence Day. And he said, we're not going to spend this kind of money on independence. Instead, we're going to spend it on our people. Let the people immediately feel it. As soon as he did that, immediately the message started to go around that this guy is connecting with the real problems. He didn't stop there. He's going to, you're going to come out and do some kind of street cleaning. He comes out himself. I was telling my wife the other day, and you see, Nigerians don't understand the power of imagery. This is what we don't understand in this country. We talked about the US just now. You talked about there's no real disconnect. Many Americans are not happy with their current president. We know that. But then again, many are. Right? So if you have about 50, well, 30, it depends on, which polls you're looking at, 50%, 30%, in favor of what you're doing, then at least you are going sort of in the right direction. You may want to change a little bit here and there, but you're doing the right thing. And imagery is what the US president uses more than anything. Many people may not like his imagery, but then some people do like his imagery. And that's what we don't understand in Nigeria. Let me ask a question. How many times does the Nigerian populace actually see their president? We barely even know where he is at any point in time. But in Tanzania, the president is out there. He's working on the streets with people. He's sacrificing.
I think when it comes to the Tanzanian situation, I think they have built a culture. Because remember when Julius Nyerere was president, he came up with the policy of villagization. He called it the villagization policy, where he said the policy has to come from the bottom up, and he consults with the people, and he sits down like a town hall meeting. What do you want us to do this year? Different from what the budget and all of the ministers are going to put together.
It seems to be like a common practice really in East Africa. There's the same thing in Rwanda as well. The president even cleans,
Thank you very much. The Rwandan president is another fantastic example of that. And here's the thing. China does the same thing. China is a communist nation. This is a nation that shouldn't even be talking to its populace, right? But they do. They have this 5-year plan system that they do. Every 5 years, they create a new plan and they go forward. And every province in China, they have representatives that come and bring ideas from different parts of China. If our president and the people in government would only listen. We're not saying agree with everything you hear, but at least let us come to the table. This is a country run by 1 or 2 people or 3 people or 10 people. When we have 180 million, you mentioned it. You said when they come to Nigeria, they don't perform because they are not allowed to perform. And I think I should say this. I've said this before a couple of times, but I think, the president needs to look into a different strategy. A communication strategy is what I mean now. When you have elections, the president or the presidents-to-be or whoever wants to come out, the governors aspiring, they come out and they spend time with the populace. You see all the pictures.
Exactly.
They eat with you, they buy body with you, that stuff. And then they get into office and then the bully buying stops. They don't eat groundnuts anymore.
You don't even see them, like you say.
You don't see them anymore. If they would just understand the imagery of that alone, they would come out, spend time with the people, talk to them. Look, I understand your problem. I can't fix it right away, but trust me, I am working on it. When you do that, you carry the people along.
Talking about what you just said, in fact, a governor in the South had to, employ that, to patch his bad image when he treated a hawker, a female hawker, badly. And then there was public outcry. He had to invite her again, put up a show
and
for the public, and it worked.
Because public imagery is the #1 strategy for talking to the public. True. If you ignore the public, you have problems like this. Because here's the thing. Your earlier guest before he left, Dr. Talabi, I believe, he talked about the health sector. And he talked about the fact that, you have these private hospitals scattered all over the place. And the public hospitals are suffering. And the government wants to maybe invest in them. But whatever they're choosing to invest in the public hospitals is never going to be enough. Because the numbers are just too, at this point, we're at what, 200 million people?
193,
193, according to NBS,
okay.
last.
And we have all these private hospitals as well. What we should be doing is connecting with those doctors. He said it here. If you connect with the people on the ground, they will be able to give you ideas for things you can't see from as far away as Aso Rock. It's just as simple as that.
Exactly. They are the ones on ground.
We are the ones
They are
on
the
ground.
ones with the people in the communities.
Exactly.
Now, if we have to go forward from here, because we found ourselves here already.
Yes.
But there has to be a way forward.
Yes.
When it comes to the debt Nigeria is owing, apart from the cancellation, the former president Olusegun Obasanjo used his links around the world to secure for us.
And strategy.
And strategy, exactly.
Yes.
Now, are we looking forward to having that again, or we just continue to service the debt that as we're servicing, we're taking more. As we service it, also it means it's going to be a continuous thing.
Motion without movement.
Exactly.
Motion without movement is a good one. It's unlikely to happen that you'll have another president very soon that will do what President Obasanjo did. I mean, he has his detractors, but we have to give, honor to whom honor is due, in the sense that if he was able to do that for us, look, if you look at it as a personalized thing, and I like to look at, the national debt as a personalized thing. If somebody were to tell you that you initially owed 15 trillion, and then suddenly you only owe 2 trillion, would you be more excited or less excited, right? Nigeria was at a point where we were getting out of the shackles of financial slavery. Thanks to President Obasanjo, no matter what his bad sides are, that was a positive, right? What the next president after him should have done is kept that legacy. But because the strategy is always different per president, you have a problem. It's happening in the US right now. You see, like I say, you have to be fair and balanced in your commentary at all times, because if you're not, you're going to sway too much to the left or sway too much to the right. Now you have a president who's come in and he's bent on changing every single thing the last president did, right? He may have good intentions, but if you do it in such a, sort of quote-unquote violent way, you're going to have a lot of people who are going to reject it.
There'll be backlash, right?
Yes, there's going to be backlash. So what these presidents should do as they come in, like you're saying now, is put a system together like what I like to, an excellent example is Lagos State. You have a Lagos State governor starting from, let's start from Tinubu. He came, he had a system in place. And then the next one came and built on the system. And this one is there now building on that. The next governor had better build on it, or I guarantee you, Lagos, we're all proud of it now. We're not going to be very proud of it in years to come. And that is the solution here. We need to have a presidency that works with, predecessors as well.
Because government is in continuum.
It's a continuum.
Okay, so now that we are servicing debt, because it seems to be difficult to pull out of debt, to pay your debts totally. Sometimes you service. Yeah. So how do you even get out of it? Is it possible for Nigeria? Yes, getting that part might not be possible
anymore. Mm-hmm.
How do you even get out of it? Is it possible? What strategy can you use?
It's very simple. It's really very simple. I mean, government itself is complicated. Economics itself is complicated. But when you have a problem like this, the strategy is very straightforward. The finance minister right now, like I said, choosing to finance debt at 2 trillion is a very good thing. If we're owing about, what, 21 trillion? That would take us roughly at the same rate, roughly 10 years to get out.
If you're not borrowing more money.
If you're not borrowing more. So
but we are borrowing more money.
No, but here's the thing. The solution is continue to service the debt at that rate, or even increase it if you can, and then you cut short on the spending. The expenditure is way too much. And even if you're going to have expenditure, you spend it on, like you said, projects that will yield for you immediately. Bill Gates, like we just mentioned, Bill Gates, came in and said, it's laudable, you have a good plan, it's great in capital projects, but you're leaving out the human aspect. The people that are going to run the capital things you're doing, the people that are going to use them, half of them are dying off. And you're not focusing on that. The health sector, the education sector. In the 2018 budget, you have a budget of about 60 billion naira for for education. And if I may say, the Senate, I think they collect at least 200 billion every year
for running costs,
allowances. And education is at 60 billion. I mean, it's ridiculous. You know?
Just the senators. We don't know about the House of Representatives
members.
members.
We have to leave it here now, but certainly we look forward to a day that the government is going to come up with that strategy you talked about that will work, and let there be no disconnect between the people themselves and what the government is doing, because government is doing a lot, but the people are not feeling the impact, like you said. Kunle Olomofe, thank you very much. You're an economist joining us on the program now. Thank you so much. Thank you. Right.